Welcome, patrons. You all asked for Andraste video, but with spoilers. So, this is basically it. Minus us talking about the Urn of Sacred Ashes, I suppose. But, play through the level. There you got the lore. But this is a collection of some of the most common theories that I see floating around the Dragon Age fandom and about Andraste. So let's don our tinfoil hats and climb into our bunkers, because it's theory time. Andraste is a mage. Okay, so this is not technically a theory, but I also get sent this so many times, so at least just want to clear the air. In short, in the story of Andraste, her crusade against Tevinter is helped along with acts of the Maker, these acts being a ton of natural disasters and other various miracles. However, in a world of magic and mystery, the theory is that this all could have been done by a mage who was just very powerful. There are also people that add in evidence from her life that what she does isn't so unusual for a mage, and that perhaps she even accidentally killed her half-sister when her magic awakened. But for the most part, the details in this don't matter too much, because, while not a bad theory, the fact is it's not a fan theory. It's actually an in-lore theory, and something Tevinter takes as a fact. While you can talk to Dorian about it in Inquisition, Andraste being a mage is actually proposed in Dragon Age Origins as well, although in a much smaller way. In one of the books you can gift to win, the description reads, "The Search for the True Prophet. This tattered tome explores the possibility that Andraste was a powerful mage, not the Maker's chosen. It seemed this book was saved from a fire at some point." The Chantry believes that calling Andraste a mage is heresy, which explains the attempt to burn it, but the Imperial Chantry, on the other hand, takes it as a fact, which is what Dorian says.
Do you really call him the Black Divine?
We don't call him that, oh no. In the Imperium, he's the true divine. The woman sitting on the Sunburst throne is some backwater pretender. It all stems from a disagreement over Andraste. Marvelous, isn't it?
Why would they disagree over Andraste?
It's not my field of expertise, but the Imperium believes Andraste was a mortal woman, a mage. Down south, they say, no, she's the bride of the Maker, ascended to his side, divine provenance, a blah blah blah. We feel better believing Andraste was one of us. Makes executing her less damning, you see. So we elected a man as divine, the South declared war, and we've been feuding cousins ever since.
What the truth is, we can't say. I think that the point of the Maker in the series is to give the world the mystery of faith, and I don't really see them ever answering that question on if she was or wasn't a mage, or really any of these theories, but that's a whole other thing. But just know that if the thought has crossed your mind, you might like Tevinter. Andraste is Flemeth. So the basics of this theory is that Flemeth is Andraste. This one, from what I can tell, was way more popular before Inquisition came out and confirmed that she was a host of Mythal, because being Andraste, Mythal, and Flemeth is a bit much, but people theorize it, so here we are talking about it. So in the Flemeth is Andraste theory, the whole thing hinges on not really believing Flemeth at her word when she confirms her tale to the Inquisitor, and instead believe that Flemeth is an older being who used to go by the name Andraste and was able to live again, much like how she survives between Origins and Dragon Age 2. There are some variations of this theory that also include her actually meeting the Mythal piece after her betrayal from Conabar, and that she was powerful way before then, or that she was a lonely woman calling out for justice as Andraste, and that the Conabar incident was just one chapter in her life. The biggest hole to the theory is if you believe Flemeth or not at her word. The Inquisitor can run down Flemeth's story as Thedas knows it, and she responds with, "That is how my tale began," in regards to her marriage and betrayal to Conabar. Now, it could be that she means here is how her tale began with Mythal, but I personally have my doubts. However, there is also this next theory. Andraste is Mythal. Okay, so the biggest difference between these two is that it cuts out Flemeth as the middleman. Andraste was just another carrier of Mythal before Flemeth was. As we currently understand Mythal's story, and as I talked about in my video on her, she was a great and powerful empress, married to Elgranon. However, she was betrayed and killed, by who we aren't sure, other than it was not Fen'Harel, who was somehow close to her in some way. How the theory is painted next depends on who is writing, but I see kind of two variations the most. One focusing on Mythal's focus on betrayal, and the other on her focus on justice. This betrayal of a husband is actually echoed in both Andraste and Flemeth's story, although in slightly different ways that I think might even poke a hole in the theory. I don't know, your results may vary. But if Mythal was hunting for a powerful woman who's betrayed by a husband, well, she would have found Andraste a bit too late, right? While it's true that at face value their stories are similar, the fact is that Flemeth lived on with the spirit of Mythal, and Andraste was immediately turned to ash, which we get to see those ashes in Dragon Age Origins, and they are mystical, so maybe? But let's pretend Andraste rose again, and if Andraste still lives, where is she now? Well, this is where the Flemeth is Andraste people kick in, but in those that just focus on Mythal, it's proposed that this is why her ashes were just magical, or that perhaps she found Mythal sooner or after a betrayal that isn't as famous. Personally, for this theory to work, I think the justice angle works much better. In this variation, Mythal came to Andraste similar to how she came to Flemeth. Mythal found a woman who was looking for justice. Even in the Chantry story, Andraste first met the Maker and gained her abilities when praying to find a way to free her people for the Imperium. She was seeking justice. From here, she met and held a piece of Mythal which aided her in her drive against the Imperium. Where the Maker fits into this is a bit uncertain. Perhaps Mythal, cunning as she was, persuaded Andraste to make up the Maker. Perhaps there is a Maker and he brought the piece of Mythal to her to aid her in her quest. Perhaps Andraste didn't know Mythal was the being she met and was joined with, so she started to call it the Maker. While Flemeth does know what she is and who Mythal was, it's possible that Andraste found another smaller piece of Mythal that was weaker. Or perhaps Andraste wasn't actually a mage, and so their connection was weaker. Or really, there's just 1,000 possibilities here on how this could work. Andraste is an old god baby. When I was making my video on Andraste, because it was no spoilers, I wanted to make sure it was known that it is believed that she was born in or around the same year as Dumat was slain. And sure enough, a lot of keen viewers commented on how odd that was. What if Andraste was an old god baby like Kieran? Now, there are a lot of moving pieces to this theory that could debunk it, so let's kind of talk about the warden that slew Dumat first. For the most part, we have the names or some sort of identity to who killed all the archdemons. The fourth blight was Garahel, the elf who was killed. Third was, we know he was a man who died. Second was a Tevinter man named Corin, who, at least in our records, has nothing said about his fate. I'm just assuming he died, but that's, the question here. And the first blight was just a Grey Warden who wore some emo armor. So at the very least, Corin and this unknown warden could have survived and set up the way for an old god baby. So, a warden who survived? Possible check. Although there is the question of the ritual and how the very first wardens would figure it out and then all other wardens centuries later would not. Granted, we always have to leave wiggle room for some sort of magical MacGuffin coming up and helping things along. For all we know, they actually did capture the old god's soul, but they did it in a completely different way, which just makes Morgan's ritual completely awkward, but who knows? The second possible complication is Andraste's parentage. At least one parent would need to be a warden, or at least tainted in some way, to have that connection to the blight. And there is some sort of magic involved. It might even be possible that the father must be a warden and the mother cannot be, but we just don't know, so I'm not even going to consider that for the moment. Now, taking a look at Andraste's parents, Eldaroth and Brona, neither are outright wardens in the lore or were tainted, as they lived a fair amount of time after the birth of Andraste. Now, while I guess it's possible that one of them could have been a warden and then left the order, during their lifetime the world is in a 200-year blight. The wardens just didn't retire, and considering how honorable her parents are described as being, I doubt that they ran away from the duty of the wardens. There is a possibility of Eldaroth not being Andraste's real father. His marriage to Brona was an arranged one, so she could have had a warden lover, although this is not hinted at anywhere. So, possibility of parents lining up? I'm gonna put that as a no, but anything could happen, I guess. Next would be if Kieran and Andraste share any strange habits. Kieran was only possessed by the soul of an old god for about 10 years, and we really only see him for maybe 20 minutes of screen time, so we don't really have a lot to go on. But what we do see is Kieran knowing way more than he should about the world of Thedas, seeing things about people that others do not, and I mean that in their blood lineage and other bizarre things. He has dreams, strange dreams, and once the soul is taken, he has this feeling of loneliness that he describes. So perhaps a constant feeling of being with someone. Now, as I mentioned in the Andraste video, there are a bunch of different reports on her life, and many of it conflicts, so I can't really say if I'm basing my conclusions on the truth of Thedas. But there are reports that sound like Andraste had a similar condition. She would have strange dreams and did feel like she was being watched by the Maker. However, I cannot confirm that she had strange knowledge of the world, so at least around half of that matches up. But it's also possible that different old god souls result in different traits, so perhaps the soul of Dumont was just able to create natural disasters, and that's what she was able to do? So, in short, the whole theory holds water, but there are a few creative leaps in logic you do have to jump through, like her parentage, but it's really not that crazy of an idea. Now, there are a lot of what I'm going to call bonus add-ons to the series, as it's so old and so popular, and it's never really had a hole bunked into it, it's only been heightened. But this is really the heart of the theory. However, here's a screen full of some of my favorite possible details that you can pause and read, and check the links below to a few posts on the matter that I found fascinating and explain kind of more than I do, just because I don't want to blather on and basically copy what these people say. And that, dear patrons, is all that I have on these common theories, on Andraste, at least. Do you still have lingering questions, proof that I'm wrong, comments about your own fan theory? Feel free to tweet me at Gildathon on Twitter or send a PM to user Gillanon on Reddit. The rest are all.